Hey everybody, it's Dan. Welcome back and welcome to a Sprue review of the Living Dead Peasants by Fireforge Games for their fantasy range. Sprue reviews, if you're not familiar, are for kits that I've identified that are really just a single sprue repeated multiple times. So in that way we can go through one sprue together and do a kind of demi unboxing, give you an idea of what's going to come inside the set if you were to pick it up for yourself. This is a very special sprue review because this is the first sprue review that is sponsored by Sprue Dude. Sprue Dude, if you're not familiar, I'll have links down in the description if you want to go check out their website or their socials. They're a US-based company that provide exactly this service, that they sell individual sprues for kits. And I've been using them for years, not just for these sprue reviews on this channel, but going years back for kit bash purposes. Sometimes I just want to pick up a single sprue of something to blend some bits in or some figures into my collection. Sometimes it's for like role-playing games or for characters where I don't necessarily need like 30 of a thing, but a kit might interest me, so single sprues are fantastic for that. But also, so sometimes I just want to get my hands on a sprue before I commit to buying maybe a whole box or a whole range of boxes from a manufacturer. I want to just like check out the production quality. So Sprue Dude's helped me out with all of that over the years, so I highly recommend you give them a look if you've not dealt with them before. From a shipping standpoint, I guess really quickly, let me just talk about that. They sent me a number of sprues, so we'll have individual reviews coming up here shortly, but I do want to talk about shipping because I've never had anything break in transit. Obviously, when you've got loose sprues, that could be a concern, but they've been doing this for a while. So what they do is they'll stack the sprues up. They put these little pieces of foam in between the sprues, and then they shrink wrap them all, so there's no movement in transit. They throw all of that into a padded envelope. Everything comes really quickly. They shipped it out on a Tuesday this week, and I got it on Friday morning, so quick shipping too. So anyway, as I said, check them out. Links in the description. So Sprue Dude sent me this sprue again of the Fireforge Games Living Dead Peasants, and the Living Dead range for Fireforge is, I think, 3 sets now. They've got the Peasants, they've got some like skeleton warriors, and they've got some mounted skeletons. But the Living Dead Peasants, the zombies, as it were, really interested me when this set came out around 2019. And I think there's a copyright stamped on here somewhere. Yeah, 2019. So it might have been like 2020 that it actually came out, but it's been out for a few years. But at the time when this came out, surprisingly, there really weren't that many plastic zombie options on the market. At the time, there was the old Games Workshop, like from the 90s zombie kit with kind of the oversized hands. That set was a workhorse, has been around for years and years and years. And then there were the Mantic zombies. So this one, at the time when it came out, was very exciting because this was giving us another multi-part plastic zombie option. And so I have always wanted to get my hands on it just to see kind of what the bits look like, again, from my purposes, critically from a kit bashing standpoint. So we're going to go through the sprue together. I'm going to give you a breakdown of all the bits that are on it. I'm going to assemble all of them. We'll take a look at some scale comparisons with other miniatures in my collection. And I do want to do some kit bashing, as I just alluded to, but then I'll give you my final thoughts at the end of the review here. So let's dive in here. So again, you're going to get 3 of this sprue if you're to pick up this set. And I do want to talk about that just for a second, because again, that's 18 figures. And from most of the distributors I saw, they go for about $30 US. I'm sure you can find it for cheaper, but the standard price point seems to be in the low 30s. So that's not bad. I do want to compare what that's like versus some other manufacturers on the market. So again, Fireforge, $30 for 18 figures for about $1.67 per figure. Turns out it's actually like right in the middle, like mid-range in terms of price per figure, because Games Workshop have their more updated zombie kit. I won't talk about that one in detail, but aesthetically that one's not for me. But again, just comparing price point, those are about $2.55 per model. It's like $51 for 20 figures. War Games Atlantic have their newly released zombie set, which is $35 for 30 figures, so $1.16 per figure. And then Mantic have had their zombies out for a number of years, and those are about $40 for 40 figures, so about $1 a figure. So this is fairly squarely kind of center of the field in terms of price per model versus some of the competition that's out there. Which is fine. I think personally I would have preferred a slightly larger price point for more figures, because 18 is, I don't know, especially if you're dealing with zombies, probably not enough. But I guess you could pick up multiple boxes. So let's talk about bodies first. So there's 3 bodies per sprue. Again, 3 sprues per kit for 18 models per box. And I think this is good. I think the sculpting is maybe a little bit clean, is perhaps my only criticism of the kit overall. As you can see here, that for like the damage to them, a lot of it looks kind of similar. That it's this like, I don't know, pockmark or kind of dots that are on the skin. I don't want to jump to arms yet, but you see what I'm talking about. So I think you could call these like maybe like freshly dead zombies, where there hasn't been a whole lot of damage done to them yet. But otherwise, I think they look great. I love the poses of the legs. I'm glad that they've gone with combined torsos and legs on these, unlike again the Games Workshop ones, which have the 2-part torsos and legs. Again, it gives you a little bit more like pose variety, but I think that it works better here with these more flowing outfits. So I think they look good. 2 female bodies in here too, which is cool to see. So 2 out of 6 are female bodies. Let's talk heads. So we've got 10 heads that are up here at the top, and I think they look pretty good. I think the more battle damaged of them look better. There's actually like 2 that, like this one here and this guy over here, that look just like humans. Like they actually look very similar, I think, to the Wargames Atlantic peasant kit heads that come in that one. But some of the more corroded or damaged ones I think look really fantastic. Like this guy here looks super detailed and horrible. But yeah, I think they look great. A couple of female heads in there too. So yeah, again, my only criticism there is 10 heads to 6 bodies. My normal standard is I want to see a 2-to-1 ratio of heads to bodies for kit bashing purposes. And so this is going to be slightly more limited because you have 10 heads to 6 bodies. And then some of them, again, are either female heads, which limits which bodies you might want to put them on. And there's also this really cool looking head, but maybe the head you only want to use like once per unit. So anyway, otherwise they look great. And then what rounds out the sprue from there, you can see, are just a ton of arm options. And so to categorize those, let's talk about down at the bottom here. You can see there are 7 empty arms, which are broken up as 4 left arms and 4 right arms by my count. And again, it's the same critique, which is that if you're looking for like old decaying zombies, like the aesthetic that you had with like the old Games Workshop zombies, that's not really what they're going for here. This is again a more like freshly, newly dead look, where even the clothes don't look that tattered to me. But yeah, you could have half of your zombies per sprue that have just 2 arms outreached with no weapon in their hand, if that's something you wanted to do. In terms of one-handed weapons, there are 7 of those, and those are a nice mix of different weapons, mostly farming equipment too, which is really cool to see for these peasants. And those are 5 left arms and 2 right arms. So everything's a left arm except for this one and this one over here. And then there's actually a pretty staggering number of, I'll just call them 2-handed weapons. You might call them pole arms, but they're not all pole arms. Some are just farming equipment. So there's 9 2-handed weapons. Again, kind of scattered throughout the sprue here. So if you wanted to, you could, I'm going to count that one as a 2-handed weapon, even though it's technically 1. So again, you could equip everybody with these larger weapons. And again, lots of really cool farming equipment, from hose to pitchforks, some shovels, pickaxe down here. So really cool. So it's a simple but compact sprue, and I think effective for what I'm after, which is going to be some kit bashing. So let's do that now. I'm going to assemble these figures. I'm going to try to use all of these bits, I think, across some different miniatures in my collection, and we'll see how they all stack up. Okay, so I've got some of these assembled. I've got some kit bashes over in the wings here that I'll show you in a moment. I will mention that even if you pick the box up for yourself, you are going to have to source your own bases, because the box does not include bases, which I think is kind of becoming the standard. Like Wargames Atlantic doesn't include bases, Victrix doesn't include bases, a lot of Fireforge sets don't include bases. So that's, as I've said before, not something that bothers me at all, because I'm going to use them for different systems anyway, but just something to be aware of. And I'll say here too, I can usually tell from looking at a sprue whether a kit is going to be easy to assemble, whether the figures are going to look good all put together. I've just put hundreds and hundreds of plastic sets together, so I got a good eye for it. And there are some kits, though, that surprise me. Like when I put them together, they are more difficult to assemble, or they don't look like maybe the proportions are wrong, and you really can't always tell until they're assembled. But there are some maybe even rarer kits that look fine on the sprue, but look even better assembled. And I think this kit is in that category where I don't do scores on this channel. I don't really delve into like, objective quantitative measures like that. But if I were, like if I did, I would probably give this sprue like a 7 out of 10. And I think all like assembled, it bumps it up to like a 9 out of 10. I think these look just so good all put together. So any like quibbles about, as I said, like whether they look rotten enough for zombies or whether they have enough heads per body, I just think they look so great assembled. They have this ball mount neck attachment, which a couple of different companies use. It's probably my least favorite attachment point for heads, but it works really well here because it allows you to get these like kind of unnatural looking kind of broken neck head positions out of them. And yeah, I mean, just the movement, like even the arms, the way that they all look on these bodies just make them look super contorted and horrifying. And I think that's just, they're very well done. I think these are fantastic looking. As I said, I think they look better assembled. And I will say too, I always hate admitting this, but here's one on a 20 millimeter base, 20 millimeter square, and here's a 25 millimeter square. And I have to concede to you, the old world players out there, that I think these look better on 25s. I think you're certainly going to have an easier time ranking them up, right? Like these sort of rank up okay, but you'd need to play around with the poses a little bit, whereas on 25s you're going to have no issue at all. Let's talk conversions for a second. There's a few that I thought you guys might want to see. So here's a Frostgrave 2 Cultist, or Cultist 2 from Frostgrave Body, with arms and a head from this set. I think that looks awesome. In all of these cases, I won't call them like hard conversions, maybe intermediate conversions. You do have to figure out a solution for the neck, because as I said, these are these like ball mount attachment points, which not a lot of companies use. So I had to just get a little shaving of plastic in there to create like an artificial neck to get this to attach. But I think the end result looks pretty cool. Here's a Wargames Atlantic Villager. Interestingly, the sleeves on this zombie set are basically identical to the sleeves in the Villager set, where it's just sort of this half sleeve design that comes down a little bit over the elbows. So I think these sets would blend together really beautifully. And it works here that the like skin is not that corroded. Allows you to mix and match bits without having to exclusively rely on the arms and head bits from the zombies. Here's an example again, Wargames Atlantic. This is their Peasant Levy box. And the shield's actually an Oathmark shield that I thought looked cool. But the head and right arm are from the zombie kit, and you can see I think the proportions are identical. I generally have a feeling that like the Fireforge stuff is bigger than a lot of the historicals that are out there, but at least in this case, I think that they blend perfectly. And then here, sticking with Wargames Atlantic, is a guard body from the Wargames Atlantic range, and then the head and arms are the zombies. So yeah, I think this is a great kit. I think that even just for the arms, there's value here because there's, by my count, 23 arms. And so yeah, even if you're just using this to blend some arms into like the Wargames Atlantic sets or some different zombie sets, it gives you some options there. We'll do a proper scale comparison here in just a second, but I did want to show you Mantic specifically here. I generally like to have different size figures in my units. I like blending in stuff from different manufacturers because I like the varied heights. I think that looks very natural. But for those who care about whether you could blend in, I'm sorry I have like a broken leg zombie here, but you can generally tell from like the head size, arm size, I think they'd blend together pretty well. The Mantic zombies look slightly more decomposed and emaciated, so they look a little bit smaller. But anyway, for those that were specifically curious about this, I think they worked fine. All right, here we go. I'm gonna have to do two separate spins on the Lazy Susan here to show you how these scale up with a bunch of different manufacturers in my collection. The names of those manufacturers you can see are written down on the bases of the figures that are primed white. And as you can see, I think you'll agree that in terms of scale, I had thought that, a lot of the newer, especially fantasy Fireforge stuff was a little bit bigger. But it's almost like they're like perfectly in between some of the more fantasy, it's like heroic scale stuff, such as from Games Workshop or Reaper, and some of the 28 millimeter or 25 millimeter, like true scale historical plastics. And then here are some more examples here. Yeah, I don't think I've ever given Fireforge credit for that, and maybe it's because some other stuff in there, different ranges, aren't this way, but I really feel that these sort of seem like they blend well with just about everybody. So what's the final verdict? I think this is really cool. It's hard to deny just how good these look all assembled. Probably the best plastic zombie miniatures that I've seen. And while I might have quibbles about things like, the head ratio or the model count inside of a kit, I think 18 is kind of a strange number. Just the sheer utility that this kit affords, even if you're just harvesting arms out of it, maybe some heads out of it, in order to, say, zombify some other sets, like the conversions we looked at with some War Games Atlantic sets, like their villagers, like their peasant levy. And if you're doing that, actually, like my criticism from a design standpoint of the fact that these are kind of fresh looking zombies is actually a feature, because it allows you to, I think, more seamlessly blend in some of these arm and head bits into kits that weren't necessarily designed to make zombies. So all in all, definitely a useful set to have in your collection. Definitely worth picking up if this is something that interests you. I think that these look really fantastic all assembled. And once again, a huge thanks to Sprue Dude for sponsoring this video and for sending this our way to take a look at together. I mentioned there's a link down in the description. Please go check them out. They've got a huge variety of sprues on offer. As I said, I use them for supplying my sprues for these videos, so I'd appreciate it if you'd give them a look as well. As I said, I've got some more review content coming here shortly, so as ever, I appreciate you dropping by for this one in the meantime. Until next time, happy gaming.